Okay, pre-calc. So next flipped lesson is going to be 3.3, all about properties of logarithms. And in fact, you'll notice, in particular with these first three, these are also rules that we went over in the first chapter of the year, exponents. I believe it was actually P.2, maybe P.5. Either way, we talked about product rule, the quotient rule, and the power rule for exponents. We'll remind ourselves of them today for exponents, and then we're also going to talk about them for logarithms. And then probably your most valuable one in terms of using your calculator, which I know you all want to do, is the change of base property. So first one, product rule for exponents is going to be that whenever we multiply the bases, or whenever the bases, like bases, are multiplied, we add the powers, or add the exponents. So here, we'd add those exponents because our base is the same. We get x to the 8th. Now be careful, because in this one our bases are different. We actually can't do anything. Okay, bases are the same, we add the exponents. It's a similar rule when we talk about the product rule. We just turn our multiplication into addition. So we expand it in this sense. So log base b of mn is going to be log base b of m plus log base b of n. And in this case we would say we can expand this to the natural log of 7 plus the natural log of x. And that's what our product rule says, that when we have the product of two things inside a log, we can rewrite it as the sum of those two things. Okay, next one we talked about is the quotient rule of exponents. So when we are dividing like bases, we subtract. So x to the 5th over x to the 1st would give us x to the 4th, because 5 minus 1. And in this case, z to the 10th over z to the 15th would give us z to the negative 5. Or, remember, negative exponent can be written as z, as 1 over z to the positive 5. Okay, again, same idea when we talk about our quotient rule. We're taking a log with some base b of the quotient of m over n. It's just going to end up being the difference of the two logs. So in our example here, we'll have the log of x minus the log of 2. And next we have is our power rule product. So when we're multiplying, or when we have a power raised to a power, we actually multiply our powers. So this would give us x to the 6th, y to the 15th. And remember, we can't do anything to put those two together. And then down here, we're going to have z to the 30th, x to the 30th. Again, different bases, so we cannot combine those two. Okay, that works here on our power rule. We could say m to the p, or the power rule for this, we can also actually bring that p out front, again, as multiplication. So here we're going to say it's going to give us 3, and then the natural log of x. So your exponent inside a log actually becomes a coefficient. Okay, exponent inside a log becomes a coefficient. So those are the three rules that we talked about in exponents, and also how they apply to logs. A new one for logs is what's called our change of base property. So if we have that the log of m base b, since we can't plug this into our calculator, we can split it into two things. The log of m over the log of b, or if we wanted to, we can write it as natural log of m over the natural log of b. And that just allows us to plug things into our calculator. For example, here, since we couldn't plug either one of these into our calculator, we can, though, however, type in the log of 140, make sure you close your parentheses, divided by the log of 5. Okay, again, making sure to close parentheses. Likewise, if we don't want to use the log base 10, which is what these two are, we can just say the natural log of 2,506 over the natural log of 7. And both of these are just going to give you some decimal approximation. It's going to be some big, ugly, irrational number. But at least we have an idea of what that number is. Okay, so that is all of today's lessons. Again, these first three are essentially the same as our exponential rules. When we have a product, remember, multiply, that we could think of that MADS term. Multiply means you add. We're just flipping it, since, well, yeah, multiply means you add, and divide means you subtract. So that takes care of the first two. Power rule is just multiply the powers, or we can bring our power out front with the log. And then the last one, change base property. Again, that's going to be most important when we talk about our calculators. All right, we'll see you next session.